What's up there, good people of the world? It's the Big Heavy, and I'm down in the workshop slash laboratory because today we're going to live our electric fantasies and unbox the new KIQ3 Max. If that branding wasn't awkward enough, the only way I think we could make that a little more bizarre is if we had Gary GNU announcing the new on News News.
This is Gary GNU, and the No GNUs is Good GNU Show.
My children of the 80s will get that. Others will think I'm bonkers, but just run with me there. Now, before we get into this, 5 seconds on why I am doing a review of an electric scooter. So basically 3 reasons. Number 1, I think these are kind of cool and interesting and hope to do a few more reviews of this personal electric mobility space. Number 2, there's a lot of people that think these sorts of things are the future, and those people are in positions of political power. They're redesigning our cities and our roads and thinking about how to reconfigure some of those spaces in order to support a vehicle like this. I'll talk a little more about how we got to the current vehicle-dominated road system we have and why there's some new and potentially different thinking around that in a future video. So watch this space. And then finally, I'm out in the suburbs. You look at the videos for these types of things. It's always cool urban hipsters, scooting around in a hip urban environment, going to get coffees or whatever those people do. I live out in the burbs. If this is supposedly the future is transportation, it needs to work both in cities and suburbs. So I aim to find out if this thing and vehicles like it are actually effective in the burbs. All right, so let's open this sucker up. For my Wu-Tang fans, you all know what the box cutter does.
The box cutter went.
And one caution that is out that NIU publishes and several others have said is to keep the box for these. They do have a 2-year warranty. I've never used their warranty service, obviously. This literally just came via FedEx. So not sure if that warranty is helpful or not, but I will try and keep this box somewhere. It is, as you can see, a pretty large box, so I'm not sure where I'm going to store that, but hopefully we'll figure something out. You are admonished on the box to both make your life electric, and there's an elaborate warning label that essentially says that this scooter is shipped in a battery, safe storage mode. So it's not going to do anything until you plug it in and let it charge a little bit. So first step, I've still got the scooter kind of in the box here. It's being supported by the styrofoam that's down there. There's this little cable that presumably connects the throttle and control system up to the controller that's down inside the scooter. That guy popped in pretty easily. And then hopefully he's going to stuff on in here and we can actually get this guy out of the box. NIU does have a video where they walk through assembly of this, so I'll kind of caveat anything that I experienced that's different than what they showed in their video, but I won't rehash everything since, I'll put a link to that video and presumably you can watch that on your own accord. So far, it looks like the thing shipped reasonably well. There's a little bit of styrofoam cruft on the brake lines up here, but otherwise don't really see any dings or damage or anything yet, so that's always a good thing. All right, so in the bottom of the scooter, there's this nice little box. It's clearly marked with all the goodies that are inside. We've got a little user manual, power brick / charger with a US cord. And inside this little pouch, we've got some screws to affix the bars onto the stem. Looks like they're pre-Loctited, which is nice. Always appreciate that. We've got a little bit of a Allen wrench here in terms of, manufacturer supplied tools that you generally end up throwing away. I would give this one like a 2 out of 5. It's nothing special. There's a little NIU logo on there, so nice of them to brand it, but I would actually, if you're going to own scooters, bicycles, anything like that, one of the tool investments I'd always recommend is a good set of Allen wrenches. Also the ones I use down in the thing. You can even see on this one, the machining's not that great on the end, so just more nicely machined tools will help you get a better grip on fasteners and screw them in a little more effectively. So this guy's gonna go in the trash for me. I do like that they threw in the box, and again, not amazing quality, but good enough. Little valve extension. What I've heard with small scooter tires, and I can attest to this, having owned bikes with small tires, it's really hard to get a pump in there. So, this guy gives you a bit more bending, a bit more clearance. So you can attach this to the tire, then attach your traditional bicycle pump to the end of this. So once we get the screws on this guy, we're going to plug them in, we're going to air up the tires, we're going to take all the plastic off, and then I'll give you some closing thoughts. All right, so the screws to fasten these bars are 3 millimeter. As mentioned, I have my little nicer Allen wrench. I use these Bond House or House or whatever Allen wrenches based on someone else's recommendation. That's a professional mechanic. They're made in the USA, despite the kind of German sounding name. And again, just a little nicer, more positive connection to whatever you're screwing in. In this case, there's nothing in the manual specifically saying this, but just something I'll do when you're screwing in something where there's more than 2 screws on either side. I'll screw one in loose, get all 4 of these loose and then go back and tighten in an X pattern. I assume that this is more to keep the stem from popping out than something you need to actually apply a bunch of force to. So I'm going to kind of tighten it to, I would say a low hand tightness. I'm not going to really wail on this. All right, so that's screwed in. Looks like they did give us 1 extra screw. They have a nice label on here that tells you the functions of the display and control panel. It is on the piece of plastic you're going to rip off to let the display be visible. Frankly, I wish instead of this elaborate warning label of all the stupid things you're not supposed to do, they had put a little sticker here with some of these notes. That would be kind of nice because, obviously, if I don't ride this for a little bit, I'm going to forget what all those various things do. But initial impressions, the build quality on this looks pretty good. Don't have a ton of experience with these types of vehicles. All my prior electric scootering experience has been Limes and Birds and those types of things that you would rent in a city, where basically what I look for is the battery full and, is there any human excrement or disgusting stuff on the handles, and that's kind of the extent of the criteria. I've had mixed luck with getting those things up larger hills and that sort of thing, so I'm interested to see how this does on hills. Thankfully, I have some big hills in this area, so I will test that out with my patented big heavy girth and see how that does. Right now, we're going to get this puppy on the charger. I'm going to do the app setup. There is a little bit of a electronic nanny thing that you have to go through where you have to ride for a certain number of feet or meters before it will unlock the full capabilities of the scooter. But I'll get this puppy on the charger and then walk you through app setup and that nanny feature, and that'll be the end of this unboxing. Now, in terms of the charger, there's a pretty small plug. It's not grounded or anything, so I'm going to assume this guy is not going to drive a ton of watts into this scooter. I believe they tell you it's about 8 hours to charge it to full. So, they may offer a fast charger or something in the future, but seems decent. Don't hear any fans or any moving parts in there. It's kind of big and clunky, but pretty light otherwise, so not too bad. All right, so I've plugged this bad boy in. The charger has turned red. Let's see if it powers up. So gave me the happy beeps. It's got the little power meter blinking away. Display looks bright, and we'll give it some charge, and then I'll take you through the app setup and kind of the electronic nanny feature and see how that goes. All right, according to the manual, this says 45 to 50 PSI is the recommended tire pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and put that little nozzle extension on my handy Ryobi pump. If you use any kind of cordless tool, and I would recommend cordless drill and that kind of thing for basic homeowner use, see if they make an air pump that uses the same batteries. I mostly use the Milwaukee stuff now, and we'll probably replace this with a Milwaukee once this guy dies. But these things are money, especially if you have kids, bikes, and that sort of thing. If you're going on a trip with a family, and I've got a family of 5, and you've got to pump up 10 bicycle tires, this will prevent you from having a stroke before you even get on the bike. So going to pump these guys up. One of the selling features of this particular scooter is it's got tubeless tires that are pre-slimed. The slime is kind of a protective coating inside the tire that should theoretically help you, if you get a puncture, help you from getting a flat. Right now, these guys are at 8 PSI, so definitely worth pumping up your tires before you take this out. That's way lower than the recommended 40 to 50. The other pro tip I will give you that I just learned is there's no valve inside this extender. So plug it into your pump before attaching it to your tires, or what little air is in there will immediately come out. I will say, even with this extender, this rear tire, it's pretty tough to get that valve stem in there. There's the hub motor. These scooters generally have the motor kind of built into the hub of the wheel, is right up in there. So at least you got big old gorilla fingers, makes it a little bit tough to get in there. All right, so let's set up the app on this puppy. So I'm going to sign up for a new account. Probably not going to get tired of saying that, so apologies for that. As you'd expect, you have to agree to ridiculous numbers of terms and conditions. And now we're playing games with CAPTCHA things. And we've got to go retrieve a code from our email address. So got my magic code. Now I need to give this thing even more information. And of course, create a password that I will presumably forget. And hopefully to save you some heartache after playing my least favorite game, which is the come up with a password that this stupid app that I'm trying to use actually appreciates. The answer for this one is not using any special characters. You need an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, and a number. So finally got that done. So let's see if we can actually pair the scooter now. So it found the scooter pretty easily. That's good. Now it's making me go through a little tutorial. So I squeeze the left brake lever, squeeze the right brake lever. Brake light came on, which was fairly exciting. Press the accelerator. And now it's going to give us some nanny screens. Wear a helmet, inflate your thing, make sure this is locked. That's probably a good tip. Now, I believe that these are set up so they're configured for a kickstart. For those that aren't in the know, that means you have to give the thing a kick or two to get it moving manually before it will allow you to use the electronic assist function. You can turn that off after you go through this tutorial, apparently. So there we go. Beep, beep. All right, so I have to ride for 200 meters in some sort of speed restricted mode, and then I will be free to do whatever kind of nonsense I wish, apparently. Now, going through the app real quickly, it looks like it gives me kind of my current state. It's obviously charging, about 3 hours till I get a full charge. What I like is it gives me a little bit of a distance estimate here, 38 kilometers. I'm going to assume that that's probably optimistic slash, maybe not so accurate. And it looks like I can indeed change my units to miles. And it's not going to let me adjust any of this stuff until I go out and do my trip. I also have a little past trip history and some stats, so total distance, total ride time, all that sort of good stuff. All right, so I've taken this out on a couple of maiden voyages and wanted to share some initial thoughts. So first off, in terms of the unlocking app, I thought it was fine. Basically, the scooter's speed limited to about 9-10 miles an hour. You have it's limited to kick to start mode. So again, you have to kind of get on the scooter, give it a push, get above an indicated 4 miles an hour, and then you can hit the throttle and you can take off. You can't mash the throttle, then get to 4 and have it take off. You got to do it after you get to 4 miles an hour. So that took a second for me to kind of wrap my brain around, but that's similar to the rental scooters. So that part was easy. There's not any notification. There's no, fireworks or beeping on the display or anything. You have to sync the scooter with your phone. One thing I found is when the scooter and the phone lose their connection, you can tap the little Bluetooth icon in the phone app, and that seems to reconnect it pretty quickly. And as soon as that was done, I was able to reconfigure the scooter. Couple thoughts on the reconfiguration. So I initially turned off the kick to start feature thinking, I wouldn't really want that. I of course went in and went to custom speed and slid the thing all the way over because I have a need for speed. And I was actually kind of surprised with how sensitive the throttle was. On motorcycles, people would call that snatchy. You hit the throttle a little bit and you get a lot of speed early on. And frankly, I found that kind of intimidating. I think the first time I tried to use the non-kick to start mode, felt like I pressed the throttle just a little bit and the scooter, almost got away from me. It kind of flipped up a little bit and, obviously I was able to stop it before anything bad happened. But I tried it one more time and had a similarly disconcerting experience. So I've turned that off for now. I'm going to stick with the kick to start. I did limit the speed a little bit in the hopes that that would reduce the snatchiness of the throttle, but it's frankly, that first millimeter or two will really give it a lot of get up and go versus later in the throttle, the last quarter of it, the last 80 to 100%, there's not a lot of effect. So very strong motor response from the beginning of the throttle, less so to the end of the throttle. And I don't know if that's just this particular scooter. I don't know if that's kind of a universal electric scooter thing. I would assume that the power application may be completely linear, but just going from no power to a little bit of power has an outsized effect on the actual perceived speed. So something to be aware of. I did find if I kind of left my hand on here and used sort of the fat or the edge of my thumb to control the throttle versus my fingertip, that gave me a little bit more stability. I felt like I had a little bit more control. So haven't fully unraveled the throttle. Motorized vehicles all have different throttle responses, so kind of par for the course. Brakes are super grabby. This scooter has both regenerative braking and dual disc brakes. I have the regenerative set to minimal. I kind of like that so that when you let off the throttle, you do get a little braking. It's similar to what you might have experienced with a Tesla or engine braking in a gas-powered car, where if you leave the car in gear and take your foot off the gas, the engine will kind of slow you down. I find that to be nice, particularly there's some hills here and going down some of the bigger hills, I could lay off the throttle a little bit and that regenerative braking would keep my speed in check versus, I assume if you turn that off, you just sort of freewheel and could end up moving pretty good unless you grab some brake. The first time I gave the brakes a little grab, I think it combines regenerative with the disc brake. So I was surprised at the stopping power. So, be ready for that as part of that initial 200-meter ride. I would, do some braking, mess around with that a little bit, get accustomed to it before you're up to speed, or you get in a dangerous situation where you really need to grab a handful of brakes. Display I found was good. Haven't really done any riding in the dark yet. I did turn the light on in the workshop when it was dark, seemed great, but again, the truth will be actually getting on the road. I found the deck is pretty wide. I've got size 12s that fit on there reasonably well. Haven't fully figured out how I want to position my feet. Everyone kind of tells you your back foot should be up and kind of on this riser on the back where there is a nice bit of rubber matting. So that works pretty well. What I did find was that puts a lot of weight on my left foot, and kind of the bottom of my left foot was getting a little tired versus my right foot, which was back. So I also tried standing, just sort of flat-footed with this foot kind of like this. That was a little more comfortable, although I did feel like I had a little more control and balance with that back foot up. So haven't quite fully figured out the foot positioning on this. I do like that the rubber decking goes all the way forward. You can also kind of get your foot up there if you're gonna, you're coming in for a stop, and that way you can lean back a little bit versus putting a whole bunch of torque onto this stem. So So that's kind of the riding experience thus far. This deck does pick up footprints and kind of dirt and stuff quite a bit, although it looks like it'd be fairly easy to wash off. In terms of build quality, and I'll go over this more extensively, but wanted to give some initial impressions. Everyone hypes up the build quality of these new scooters. I have no other scooters to compare it to. So on one hand, I'm a little bit worried about overall quality of the products from the industry, because I found the build quality of this scooter to be middle of the road, comparing it to bicycles and motorcycles. You know, these guys retail for $1,000, regularly go on sale for $800. If I bought a $1,000 bicycle and, you know, my felt racing bike, I think was $1,200 out the door. I've put a bunch of parts and stuff into it, but just much nicer machining, much nicer componentry. You know, we've got dual disc brakes on here, but the calipers, you know, just sort of look like generic parts. They're not from a major bicycle component manufacturer. They don't look great when you get up close and check them out. You know, they just look like sort of middle of the road manufacturing. You know, the quality of the screws and fasteners, quality of the brake levers, all the stuff that you kind of look for if you were a bicycle nerd is not terrible quality by any means, but it's, you know, it's like high-end Walmart bicycle kind of quality. I'm sure you could upgrade these levers. I'm sure you could upgrade the calipers if you got funky. And, you know, I'm sure that 80-ish% of the cost to manufacture these types of vehicles goes into the lithium batteries that are in there. Those suckers are still expensive, and presumably they've got to cut costs somewhere. So I'd imagine it's on the componentry. On the plus side, you know, the light looks nice. It did seem to put out a lot of illumination when it was in the garage last night. Cable routing's nice. You know, I've seen some of the other scooters where they've got, you know, cables flapping everywhere and they've got them wrapped up and it just looks really janky. You know, this one, everything kind of goes fairly nicely into the stem. Everything's covered up. I like that they put red cables on there, so you got a little red accent. You know, it looks like somebody spent more than 15 minutes trying to figure out how do we design this thing. So it looks relatively decent. You know, the logos and stickers and everything looks pretty good. So if this is the pinnacle of scooter build quality, I'm a little interested / worried about seeing some of the other products that are out there. By no means do I think it's bad build quality. I was just, you know, having heard all the hype about how News have this amazing, you know, Mercedes grade build quality, I was a little bit underwhelmed compared to, again, a middle of the road or higher end bicycle or motorcycle. The other early preview I will let you in on before ending this rather long unboxing video. This thing was able to take my big old butt up 2 of the major hills around here. There's one more rather steep hill that I want to go and ride with a level so I can figure out what the actual grade of the hill is. It is pretty consistent. You know, I wasn't flying up the hill. I think I got down to about 8 miles an hour on one of the larger hills as it was struggling to get up. And the other thing I noticed is, you know, you'll have the throttle down, you'll have it buried to get you up the hill. And, you know, again, you can kind of play with it and you're not going to get much increase or decrease in speed when it's really working to pull you up that hill. As the hill evens out, you start to accelerate fairly quickly. So, you know, if you're not paying attention and you're on a hill that suddenly levels out, you might get a little more go than you were expecting. So, overall, pretty happy. You know, my 4-ish miles of goofing around took the battery from 100% to, I think, 89. That's going up and down a bunch of hills around here. That's, you know, brand new battery, so I don't know if the battery meter needs to calibrate or anything. But fairly impressed. Looking forward to doing some more experimentation. And again, figuring out, is this something that's viable / useful and helpful for somebody that lives in the suburbs? And, you know, I see myself going to neighbors' houses for, you know, watching games or doing something fun. I see myself using this when, you know, sometimes my wife will take the minivan over to a kid's sporting event, so she's got everyone in there. I'm coming to meet her later. I can zoom over, you know, throw this in the back of the van versus having to bring 2 vehicles over to an event like that. And I see this, you know, cruising down. We have a little neighborhood market area where, you know, I might go over for lunch if I'm working from home, doing grocery runs, kind of all those, you know, within 3-4 miles of the house type errands. So I'll report back on all that in the full review. Until now, you know, a cautious thumbs up on the new Max, and we'll see how this goes and see how the magical world of small personal electric vehicles works out. Until then, ride safe and keep the rubber side on the road. Peace. Ever wonder why every talking head on YouTube asks you to hit the like and subscribe button at the end of their video? You were right, because we're living in a computer simulation. And our benevolent robotic overlords get just a little bit of energy every time you hit that like. So do me, the rest of civilization, and our benevolent robotic overlords a favor. Mash that subscribe, be kind to each other, keep living your simulated dreams.